Lovely music nourishes us today, and we hope these words also nourish the heart. Thomas Friedman in the New York Times on Sunday, May 31st, wrote this: "If recent weeks have shown us anything, it's that the world is not just flat, it's fragile. And we're the ones who made it that way with our own hands," he says. "Just look around. Over the past 20 years, we've been steadily removing man-made and natural buffers, redundancies, regulations, and norms that provide resilience and protection when big systems, be they ecological, geopolitical, or financial, get stressed. We've been recklessly removing these buffers out of an obsession with short-term efficiency and growth, or without thinking at all. At the same time, we've been behaving in extreme ways, pushing against and breaching common sense political, financial, and planetary boundaries." When I read Friedman's words, I was stunned into reading on and simultaneously trying not to lose faith in our world. Between keeping my grown children fed and writing sermons and attending Zoom meetings and doing strategy for the church, I'm trying not to lose faith in our world. Because I don't know about you, but it's running thin for me. As a faith leader, that puts me in a precarious position. I have to believe what I say to you today. I have to know something deep in my heart to speak today. And the world so topsy-turvy on top of the viral growth and the federal troops in our streets, it's all a bit much to digest. In Friedman's words, we've been steadily removing man-made and natural buffers, redundancies, and regulations and norms that provide resilience and protection when big systems get stressed. Reminds us that we are at the center of our problems. And the circular reminders and stress and feeling responsible and seeing few ways forward has me questioning my faith in us. Then a month ago, it rained a lot. One of those Texas downpours that lasted a few days. And as I walked around my neighborhood, I started noticing mushrooms in places I wasn't expecting them. Small, large, flat umbrellas, round, colorful ones. And I started asking myself, what is going on here unseen? I've done a little research on mycology, not only in honor of the poem today, but in honor of the world I noticed after that rainstorm, the world of mushrooms. I found out that mushrooms have been around for tens of millions of years, that mushrooms are essential for forest and grassland ecology, for climate control and atmospheric chemistry and water purification and biodiversity, that humans evolved in ecosystems dependent on mushrooms, that without mushrooms, there would be no humanity. And no matter how superior we feel to them, we are dependent upon the continual activity of these fungi. And above all, the relationship isn't reciprocal. It kind of puts us humans in our place, doesn't it? The learning continued. I learned that a handful of healthy soil might contain miles of fungi, invisible to the human eye. That the largest living organism on Earth today is a fungus in Oregon, just beneath the ground, covering 3.7 square miles and estimated to weigh up to 35,000 tons. I learned that fungus is all kinds of things, from athlete's foot to stem rust that afflicts wheat and is a major threat to global food security. And it also eats rocks and makes soil and digests pollutants and nourishes and kills plants and can survive in space, can induce visions, can produce food sources, can make medicine, can manipulate animal behavior, can influence the composition of the Earth's atmosphere. I learned that fungi have cleaned up diesel-contaminated soil, have broken down pesticide residues, have digested spilled crude oil, have consumed piles of house plastic waste. I learned that following the nuclear blast at Chernobyl, the industrious, resilient fungi were among the earliest living things to appear there. They grew on the reactor walls. They were attracted to the radioactive hot particles. They harnessed the radiation as a source of energy. Scholars say this is a holdover from their evolution as one of the only things to grow after the cataclysm of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. I have had a mixed history with mushrooms and fungi. I've eaten tiny threads of mushrooms, and I've been on mushroom hunting expeditions, some successful and some failed. One with my brother a year ago on a rainy Catskill afternoon. We walked peacefully through the woods near his house, chatting and watching for sprouts of color. And then in a patch of clover, golden chanterelle mushrooms. Mushrooms for dinner like the ones in the poem, little stars. We dined on that soft, wild food and wine that night, one I will always remember. And another time I was with my friend John in a sweltering summer day in the Berkshire Mountains, the land of my father's ancestors. Hours went by as we walked through the land until one moment when I turned and heard John yell, "Chicken!" A shelf of chicken of the woods mushrooms, the joy of life pursued. That night we dined also on those wild, soft foods. What is this all about? The poem today is a poet walking us into a deep, damp woods, a privilege many may never have but in city parks or in our backyards. But through the poem, he takes us there. He slows down. He notices the life and death cycles of fallen trees and earth and sun and creeks. He looks at black earth and realizes it is dotted with golden chanterelle mushrooms, like stars, he says. He commands us, eat, swallow, absorb. Maybe instructions for mindful eating, but maybe for mindful living. Thich Nhat Hanh always says, it's not a miracle to walk on water, but to walk on the earth, to walk aware of your place in the infinite, I say, to be here. Eat, swallow, absorb. The poet points to this moment in his life when he walks in the silence like death, like walking with God in the Garden of Eden. In a way, he is saying to us, take pleasure in life even when life feels off kilter or without joy. He's saying, be redeemed by something bigger than yourself. He's saying, be part of something unseen and take comfort in it. Life and death, awareness that allows us to grow into new things and new creatures. When a friend who loves this poem asked me what direction the sermon would go, I said this. I said, it's about the unseen, eternal process of decomposition no one sees and how it ties to being part of the chorus of life's majesties, to which he responded, sounds like my golf game some days. We laughed. And then we talked about what this poem is about. What is the poet pushing us to see in his poem, Have You Ever Eaten Stars? Maybe a simple reminder that we are rescued from disorder by the big reactor in the sky and destined to diffusion and part of a process that is way bigger than we are. That while mushrooms are everywhere and will outlive us by an eternity, they are a marvelous reminder of the unlikely fortune to be alive at this moment. Maybe we are learning again that a poet can write a poem years ago and talk about a walk that he took that can transport us to a place we may never see. And that in that experience is a miracle of life. Maybe we're learning that the transportation of us to that bench on the side of a mountain to that damp forest, staring at a field of mushrooms we didn't eat, can ask us to stop, to look, to pay attention, to experience life, the life that we live that is around us. And maybe that in doing that, in hearing the poem and its demands, we might realize that we too can rejoice now. That we don't have to look at life in the rearview mirror for glory, that the holiest moments of life are here and now, and we are part of it. That we can respond to all kinds of things like my friend John did when he saw the chicken of the woods mushroom on that hot Berkshire summer day. The composer John Cage was not only an avant-garde musician, he was also an avid forager for mushrooms. He actually supplemented his income by selling mushrooms to upscale restaurants in Manhattan as a young man. He once persuaded the administrators of the New School in New York to allow him to teach a course on mycology along with his music. And he said of his foraging this, he said, "Often I go in the woods thinking after all these years I ought finally to be bored with fungi." Cage said, explaining the joy he had in finding mushrooms. He said, "Look," holding a mushroom he found in his hand, "this is life. This is supreme good fortune. And that good fortune is that we are both alive." My question for you this week is a list of questions, in fact. How will you rejoice about part of the universe that you are in this week? How can you point another to the life that you see, the eternity of all life that exists around you, and share in their joy? And how can you be surprised by joy and thankful for the glory of this day, today, and this week? It seems a luxury to be asking these questions in the midst of all that we're going through. But people of faith have always reminded us that when things are difficult, when the country's on fire, the leaders spurring violence, the bigger disease we have is a dis-ease of each other and so on, that when all this is real, it has in so many ways also been real before. People of faith say, keep up hope. Keep faith in each other and in the world. And we have sung hymns like this, the hymn we're about to sing, "O Life That Maketh All Things New," before. I remember singing it in dire times in the church after wars broke out or after terrorist acts. And the lyrics go like this: the freer step, the fuller breath, the wide horizon's grander view, the sense of life that knows no death, the life that maketh all things new. Friends, we sing this because even in the face of death and suffering, even as we struggle in our lonely lives to make sense of all that's going on, and the frame of the world bends under our short-term efficiencies and malice, we know that life is made new and hope restored in small and unseen ways, in forest soils, in the forces that work on each of us, in our hearts and in our loves. Friends, the question today is, have you ever eaten stars? Which means, have you ever been surprised by the joy of life's eternal nature? Have you ever been pushed to see the unseen and in your surprise jump with joy? And in the face of great challenges, pain, loneliness, despair about the world, loss of faith, kept the faith and the hope alive anyway? I have. And I know you can go there with me today, this week. Have you ever eaten stars? The poet takes us on a walk in the woods. He gives us a meal, and then he reminds us that beyond the food that nourishes our bodies. The real food that we need is the food of the Spirit that sustains us. Let the heart rejoice are the last words of the poem. What other need now is possible to you but that of seeing life as glory? That is the spiritual food of the day, today and for all days.